From the peak of Saddle Butte to the depth of the LaPorte Slough, this is the Trent Klarenbach podcast, brought to you by the Klarenbach Grain Report and the Klarenbach Special Crops Report. Today's guest is going to be, it's fun. Always have a great conversation with him. It is Allan Johnston of Johnston's Grain, the founder of Johnston's Grain from Welwyn, Saskatchewan. Allan, pleased to have you here.
Well, good. You even said Welwyn right.
Did I?
Yeah.
I've never been there.
There's a Welwyn on Garden. It's a city just north of London, England. That's what this town's named after.
Oh, is that right, eh?
Yeah.
Interesting. So British settlers, I guess, eh?
Oh, yeah.
I guess Johnston's British.
We're Irish-British.
Are you?
Yeah.
So I was told, I had an archaeologist, a friend of mine, she worked with us. She told me it was basically the British and the Germans got the best land in the province. Does that make sense to you? Sound about right?
Well, they were maybe the first one. There's a lot of Ukrainians came over, and they're good farmers, and they're on really good land, especially north of here, that Yorkton and Norquay and all through that area up there. Just beautiful land, and they're big, good farmers, that we deal with lots of them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I just think back, and there was, she was just referencing back at the turn of the century in the teens and the 20s, right? So
yeah,
1800s. But yeah, anyways, that's good. So, okay, Allan Johnston, you've done a lot of things in your life, so before we get into the weeds on Johnston's Grain and the last 40 years of your life, what was the first 40 like? What was it like for little Allan and Welwyn?
Well, I was born in Moosomin, Saskatchewan, but lived 2 miles north of Welwyn here on the farm with my dad, and just grew up a farm kid, just bugging around. Never was made work too hard until I got into being a teenager, and then I really wanted to get involved, and did so. I was really keenly interested in our farm and our machinery. My father would go out and buy new machinery, and then he didn't know how to run it too well. So, God, I was just all over it. I like combines and tractors, and just really, really interested. And still am farmer at heart, but that's a long story. I'm not farming anymore, but we still own our farm.
Yeah, it's interesting as a young child, maybe certainly a boy anyways, I can relate to growing up, and those big machines and the opportunity and the responsibility to get old enough and be dealt with the responsibility to operate one and learn how to service it and maintenance it and look after it. That was a big deal for many of us.
Well, you mentioned big machines. Our little town here, Welwyn, Sanders Farm Equipment took on a versatile operation and sales in the 60s. Can you imagine? And
wow.
It's a little two-stump town, 200 people. And it was first, I think there were 118s was the numbers on them. 4-wheel drive in a cab, my God, I was just stand there and drool, because we always had open cabs and lots of Massey tractors. And we were pretty well Massey people. And I was just always after my dad, let's get one of those versatiles. He said, oh, it's too big. We don't need that.
Well, that would have been a big deal. And I had a book about the history of versatile, and I did a series of newsletters, I guess, just documenting or sharing what I learned in the versatile history. It's fantastic. So if you had a cab on that 118, the first ones didn't have a cab.
Yeah, this one did. And maybe there was one there without a cab. But the farmer that invented this, he was from where? Northern Saskatchewan, wasn't he? Somewhere.
Yeah, I think he's Saskatchewan. Yeah, was it Precast?
And he made it. He couldn't get anybody to look at it. I think, I might be wrong, Barry. I think I read that once where he moved to Ontario and built one again in his backyard. But long story short, beautiful equipment. I ended up loving it. I just love versatile equipment, and never had a combine, but I had a 555 versatile, which was to me that was like driving a locomotive.
Yeah, the triple nickel.
Yeah, tiny little thing, but I thought it was huge.
Yeah.
did the job for me, really. And then I bought a full-type IH combine and put a straw storm on the back because we had a lot of rye. And my father passed away in '83, and he had rye, and I got some more land with rye on it. So I had this 555 Versatile pulling that Case IH combine with the straw storm. When you went through the straw, all you could see where the swath was on your left was yellow, like the yellow mark where it was laying.
Oh, I bet. Well, yeah, all that power on the front and that straw storm on the back.
It just annihilated the straw, just gone, which was great because I was a continuous cropper already, and I wanted to get rid of that straw so it could get into cropping it again.
That was a good mix. And was that a 914 or what model of it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we never had
Nice
one.
big combine.
Yeah, there's a lot. They sold a lot of those things, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. It was a good combine. It worked well.
Interesting. So you were continuous cropping when would that have been? In the 70s then? Or the 80s?
I started farming on my own. That was in 86, 87. No, just a minute. I got to think. Yeah, that was 83, 84 in that era. Yes, that's the era it was. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
continuous cropping. And I remember back in 82 or 81 or 82 in there, I was still farming with my dad and my brother, and it was a really, really nasty, dirty, windy day. And there was a local sale on. So we just, to get out of the wind, I think Dad just said, let's go over to that sale for a while. So we went over there, and when we were driving over, 3 or 4 miles from here, he could see the soil out of his fields drifting into his page wire fence that was built in the 30s, creating soil drifts. And I'm shaking my head, and he's looking at it. We're talking about it, and nothing more was said. So we went to the sale. Couldn't stand the wind anymore, so we left, and we're coming home and driving just about up half mile south is my home place. And Dad was going to turn in, and I said, Dad, just go north, would you? Just past my place. What do you want? What do you want? He wanted to get back and get to work. I said, I want to show you something. Just go north. So he thought he was going to turn in here on this yard. I said, no, go a little bit more. Well, where are we going? He started getting anxious, and he drove by to the field that I'd continuous crop.
Yeah.
Tell you the rest of the story. The wind had not done anything. There was no soil drifts. There was no stuff floating around. And I just said, turned around, went home. Nothing more was said.
That's a good lesson. That's a good lesson. I could have used that.
Well, I didn't teach him. I must tell you, Trent, I didn't teach him too many lessons. He was the brilliant one. I was the learner.
Yeah, well, where I was going with this was you taught by showing instead of taught by telling. And I have a tendency to tell people what they should be doing and help what they should think. And it's better to let them figure it out on their own.
Well, Dad was eventually going to see that, but I wanted to be there when he saw it.
Yeah,
see the look on his face. He was easy to get along with, but just strict and old school, eh?
Yeah.
And hardly around the farm because he was big in cattle. He was away 3 or 4 days a week sitting at cattle auctions. Dad started Prairie Livestock in Moosomin in 1978.
Okay.
It's a huge order buying house, still going to this day. He started that in 78, and 5 years later, he was 63 years old, had a stroke and a heart attack, and died on us.
Oh, that's too bad.
That was a kick in the head, I'm telling you.
That's young.
I really, really admired my dad, and he did well by me and our whole family,
Yeah. So, what were you seeding with back then? Like you're seeding in a standing stubble, I'm assuming.
We had Case IH 2 10-foot drills, case.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That you could split. Boy, that's a big job when you're done to split that and put it away in a shed. Like, good God, you think about it, 20 feet. So when I started farming on my own in 82, I went out and I purchased more seed rate, M11s.
In 82?
2 M11, yeah.
So was that a shank then, or a drill, or what was that?
It's a shank, yeah.
Shank, and it shovels on it, or drills, or?
Oh yeah, shovels on it, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And it had inside tires too. When you had a flat tire on the inside, what a. Anyway, don't want to get into that one.
Yeah, well,
But it did a beautiful job. Did a nice job seeding. I wasn't into the air seeders yet, but it was just, just on the edge there before.
yeah. Well,
But
you
I
guys
got
on
that new, I got that drill new, and it just did a dandy job for me. I had 2,300 acres seeded in '82 before a lot of people around here started, and I just had one hard man, my uncle.
with that Morris drill.
Yeah, the Morris drill, pulling it with the 555, and then my other tractor was I had a 160 versatile for stones and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And my father, I had a small Case IH tractor. Got some of his equipment.
Yeah.
So that's and the first year I go out, rented some land back north here, and it was good land. It's never not rained there before or since. And it rained nothing that year. 2/10 of rain, but July the 10th. So we won't talk too much about that, but I lost $160,000 that year.
It's a lot of money.
And 22% interest rates.
Yeah.
The banks went from saying, what do you want to buy next, to get in here and pay the most you can against that. I could hardly pay the interest.
Oh. Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah.
So I farmed 83, Dad died, 84, 85, and then in 86, just to get us out of farming here, I quit, told my wife in January, I said, I'm going to quit farming, and she was a farm girl. So that didn't go over too well, but she was a teacher, and she was kind of supporting me. And I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. If I keep farming and we have another drought, I'm going to lose land, some of my dad's, some of ours. I said, I'm not prepared to do that. So I rented it out. My neighbor still rents to this day, 40 years later.
Wow.
And made a deal with the bank, paid off our debt. Excuse me. Sorry. I had a sale, sold our grain, and away we went. And stumbled into this business. Just that's another hour story, but I just kind of by chance got into this business, and that again was because of my father. He said everybody's got grain, but only half the people have cattle or horses or something, which he was big in. Yeah. And it just always stuck in my head. This man came along one day from Tisdale, starting a new company, Capital Grain. Right. Don Monroe, Harry Monroe, Merv Burchide.
Yeah.
And Merv was the guy they sent down here to see us. I was working for Laverne Affleck and Sheldon, and of course Laverne was too busy to take it on. He said, well, maybe Allan would. So they talked to me, and click. So I started being a dealer for them, working for Laverne. Anyway. I started working in this company as an agent for Capital, and Laverne and I were partners. Well, within about a month, Laverne sold his fertilizer dealership in Rocanville to Sharps in Moosomin, fertilizer dealer.
Okay.
So that automatic. In the meantime, I'd got into moving fertilizer. So I had to Laverne had to get me out and say, Levi, go on, because he'd sold to Sharps.
Yeah.
So I moved from this little shed, 12 feet, 10 feet wide, 14, 16 feet long. That's where the scales were. It is an hydrous plant that I was working for him. So I moved to town and got a building that was pretty new and it's never been used for 10 years. And then set up Johnston's Grain Marketing. And Laverne and I had to split. And away we went.
Wow, you just named a number of names there that have been, I would say, had quite an influence on agriculture in Saskatchewan. Yourself,
big time.
Grain, yep. Monroe's, yep. Laverne, the Afflecks, Merv. It's
yep.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, and I would say Don Monroe. I was a farmer for years and thought I knew quite a bit. Well, I found out I didn't know a damn thing. I got talking to Don Monroe. Oh my God, he was so good. That's another thing. When we were still in Rocanville, Don wanted Laverne and I to put in a fax machine, $3,600.
A fax? What year was that? $3,600.
Yep, that was
Wow.
in 86. So put it in. And Don would fax me the futures closing every day, and then he'd walk me through it. We'd just take a couple, 3 lines, and he would educate me. And I had lots of questions because I was eager to learn.
Yeah.
And he was so calm and quiet about it. I to this day, I can't say enough good about Don Monroe. Anyway, he taught me that and taught me what was going on, and tried to move some grain. And a friend of mine come along and said, Allan, we would meet his wife and my wife. We would get together. He said, Allan, I'm growing some Oriental mustard. Can you move it? Because that wasn't a big deal around here.
No.
I said, I don't know. So I phoned Don Monroe. I said, Don, got 3,800 bushels of Oriental mustard. He claims it's the number 1. What can you do on that? This is really interesting here. And I said, well, he said, I don't market it, Allan, but I can put you on to somebody in the States that does. I just thought, what, in the States? I said, who would that be? He said, well, phone this guy in Conrad, Montana. His name is Augie Hansen. He's with a company called P.J. Anderson, and they buy mustard. This is so neat. This is what got me going. So I phoned up Augie answered the phone, and I told him Don Monroe referred me down, and he was really, really friendly. He says, well, how can I help you, Allan? I said, well, starting this grain thing, I just have one company I work with, and this guy referred me down to you because I got a bunch of Oriental mustard. Oh, he said, oh, we buy it all the time. Hello? He said, and brown and yellow. And I'd hardly even heard of mustard, you know.
Yeah.
So he gave me a price on it, bid the farmer locally, and got his Oriental mustard moved. And then just kept buying mustard that fall for P.J. Anderson. And then a company in Vancouver, Elders Grain. Have you ever heard of them?
Well, yeah, because
They were big. Go ahead.
Well, it was Allstate, Reinhold and 2 guys from Butterley and
Nunweiler.
Yeah, that's our neighbor back home. Yeah, and then they sold to Elders, right? Mid-80s.
Elders, I'm from Australia, and guess who was running it? Rick Dobransky.
Oh yeah.
Did you know Rick?
You know what? I met Rick once. I met Rick at the crop production show in a hotel room. It was a little party suite or something, right?
He wouldn't have been drinking, would he?
I don't know. I know I was, so I can't comment on anyone else.
Well, I tell you what, I started dealing with them, and in about 2 months, I'd built up. We charge a very small commission, but they owed me thousands of dollars. The guy, Brent Enerson, was working for Elders out there in Vancouver, and Brian Atkins. They were the buyers that I kind of went to. They were younger than me. And I bought them so much mustard that Enerson said one day, he said, my desk, all it says is Johnston's Grain because all my faxes are heading on it, Johnston's Grain. And there was a stack of them.
Yeah.
Mustard, brown and yellow. And they weren't paying my commissions. Here I got a guy hired, I had a girl working for me, I had an office expenditures, and I was buying them all the mustard. Well, this didn't make sense. So I phoned Rick up one day and I said, Rick, my wife's off work here on the 1st of July. She's a teacher. We're going to fly out there on the 2nd, and I'm bringing my my briefcase full of invoices. So we went out there and we went into his, not ballroom, but office.
Boardroom.
Boardroom, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yep.
And you wouldn't believe who was in there. Just all the grain industry was in there. A Fowler that runs G3 in Winnipeg. Yeah. He was there. I really liked him. And Rick Dobransky was running it. Brent Enerson, Brian Atkins, and forgetting 2 or 3 of the boys that ran Fenora Grain. They were all sitting around this table. And I told them my problem, and I said, here it is, and I need to get paid. Okay, so we met for an hour, and they were so-called busy, so I don't know how they were, because I was out on holidays. Just joking. So went home, And I phoned up, and Brian Atkins was put in charge of paying me. He now works in the port out in Vancouver and with his son. And he was supposed to start paying me. So waited a week, nothing came. And then the next week, I got a check for $2,500. And well, this is a start. But by that time, I'd bought at least another $5,000 or $10,000 worth of grain for them. So that went on from July till January or December. 2,500, 2,500, 2,500, and I was going up what they owed me, and it was just driving me crazy, And I kept talking to Rick. I got to know Rick really well. So finally one day, I was threatening them, and they had one of their new sales. I don't know if I can tell this. I had a new salesman from out there phone me up, wanted to sell me some feed peas, rail cars. I said, well, I can do that, because I thought of 2 or 3 guys. I think this guy was from Etonia. If I remember correctly. I can't remember his name, but anyway, I sold him 2 or 3 cars of these feed peas. And I said, when you get them, you'll get an invoice. Just send the check to me, which he did. It never got to Elders. It never got to Elders because they still hadn't paid me up what they owed me. And they were going to take me to the courts for get a lawyer and take me to court over that. I said, well, that'll be fun. Let's get at it. Never happened. They still owed us money. Anyway, long story short, while I was doing all that with P.J. Anderson and Elders Grain, Humboldt Flour Mills, Wilf Chamney, he was in his 80s. And I forget his partner. Shit, I should never forget. Got wind of me doing all this mustard. Wilf phoned up one day and he says, what are you doing buying mustard? I'm the mustard king, not you. I said, okay, well, whatever. I said, do you want to buy some? He said, well, I guess you're buying lots, aren't you? And I said, yeah, quite a bit. So he started buying mustard through us. So I had P.J. Anderson, Elders Grain, and Humboldt Flour Mills, the 3 powerful mustard buyers in Canada, and very aggressive. Hey? So that didn't turn our whole company around, but what it did is give us a base to start working from, because these guys paid. The Elders I finally got their money out of them, but I'm telling you, when you start up a company like this and you got employees, I hired a couple of traders and a secretary, and she was wonderful, and just renting everything. And spring of '87, I decided I'm going to go to a trade show. So the Farm Progress Show came up. Went in there, had a booth. I didn't have a clue what it was doing, but walked in like I thought I knew what it was doing. Had a booth. Ended up coming home from that show with 18 companies that said they would use my service.
Really?
From 3 to 18. Just, I was so ecstatic. When I got home, it was unbelievable. And that just kept us going, but never was easy for the first 10 years because I was always battling the farmers all their lives, hauled the elevator, go home with their check. Through us, we would get the freight paid for, picked up, but they'd have to wait 10 days, 2 weeks, sometimes a little longer to get paid. And also, they were in love with the wheat board. Blindly talked into believing in, like the wheat board was like a religion. And if I mentioned something,
it was a cult.
Hey,
it was a cult. Like,
and if I said, yeah, it was a cult. When I said something against it, they'd hang up and phone back and give me more hell. You know? Yeah, it was and I would just sit there.
I believe it. Oh, geez,
yeah, that was incredible. That was. I have hundreds of stories like that, hundreds of them.
So that was that the mid '80s or late '80s at this point?
Well, no, '86 I started. '87 I went to Regina, and that's about the time Blair Sharp there phoned me. We were in town. Yeah, we were there till '91, and again, having trouble getting these people. They sure wanted you to use your service and get the grain, but they didn't want to pay their bills. So, come late, like 1991, I was owed so much money and couldn't pay the rent or pay my wages and that. This is ridiculous. So I said to my 2 partners at that time, or 2 people that worked with me and around me and friends. I said, if you'll buy in, that'll bail me out till we get this collected. So one did, one didn't. And long story short, it lasted a very short period, and these guys that invested all wanted their money back. Well, it doesn't happen that quick. Eh? And when they bought in, I just said, anyway, I'm not complaining now. I'm just looking back, grinning about the whole thing. So I was going to come home and quit because my wife said, well, this is as bad as farming. I said, yeah, you're right. So I went home and I slept the first night, and I thought, I'm not going to quit. I got this whole thing. I got it off the ground, you know. I got it to stage 1 where I thought it was going to go to minus 50, you know. So I told Judy, I said, I'm going to set up an office in the garage here. We had a new garage. I said, I'm going to work out of there. So started there, fixed it all up, insulated, put big windows in where the door was, and had a secretary and one guy buying grain for me and myself. That was in 91, and things just kind of improved, but they weren't taken off on fire by any means. But got to 95, and I had a guy contact me in the early 90s from Vancouver. He was from Taipei, Taiwan, and he made poly bags. Those bags you put lentils and peas and everything in.
Yeah.
And I started selling for them. His factory was in Vancouver, and he had one in China. So I started selling them for him. And in 95, in 91, we moved back to the farm here from town. We're now back to the farm because I had to, because of these bags, you know. I had to be around here. Trucks, had to get trucks and all that. Just more debt, just like farming it.
Yeah.
And we got into that, and in 95, we built this office here. It's 40 by 40, added on a warehouse to it. And then we had another warehouse, and we used an old cattle shed. And we had this thing full of not hundreds, but thousands and thousands of these bags. They're all wrapped in bundles. And we hauled them all over hell. And that really helped us get to stage 2, you know.
Yeah.
And we just, I don't know, from there, I don't know where to start, where to stop. It just kept growing. Just kept growing and growing and growing. I've gone through probably 100, 150 employees, and some of them quit. Some of them we had to set adrift. Some of them turned out to be just godsends, beautiful people. And just last week, we have a guy in Calgary. We'd hired him from Manitoba 3 years ago. Worked in Calgary. He ended up being our #1 trader. And he informed my son Chevy last Friday, a week ago. He said he's going to resign because he's going to go home and work with his mom, with his dad and his brother in another business, nothing to do with ours.
Yeah.
Oh, we just were shocked because he was so good and we liked him so much. But anyway, that happens.
That happens.
Now we're looking. But we've gone from me to 35 employees now.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a big business. It's a big business.
Well, it is. It takes a lot of hopping. But we're just like gypsies, I tell farmers now. We're into everything, you know. We're into regenerative, like grain, making, we call it regenerative, making soil healthy and cutting back the use of fertilizer and that. And that has just taken off big time. We just hired a PhD last week. Yeah, that's on top of that 35.
Holy cow.
He's going to do our testing for this product. We had a professor in Saskatoon and another person, but we weren't getting our turnaround on the soil samples quick enough. So we got our own guy.
Interesting.
He will do that going forward. We've got 2 agronomists, one in Calgary, one in Shaunavon, and we got bigger and bigger and bigger into chemical. Chevy and Joel, my other partner, went to Shanghai, China, just pre-COVID, like a month or 2, and toured a couple of Chinese factories producing like glyphosate and everything. And they made a couple of deals with companies and came home from there, and we just went up the scale. Like we have over 75 different generic brands of chemical now.
That's crazy.
When I first started, like we couldn't get any 540, only get 360. So everybody wanted 540. So then we got 540, and then everybody wants RT 540 cycle. But I must tell you this story. We were in China. Or I wasn't there that trip. And they saw stuff coming off the assembly line. Same product in it. This tote was stamped with generic stuff. This one was stamped with, you know what?
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah.
Same stuff. This would charge $2 or $3 a liter more than this.
Yeah.
But people wanted this because they were totally sold that this was better. But we've just sold boatloads of this generic stuff now. They just don't even get a call back. They just reorder. You know? In fact, I was talking to a guy Friday from up by Yorkton, and he gets our daily report, and he didn't know that we sold chemical that much. And I said, yeah, I told him what our price would be. And he said, well, get your guy to call me on Monday. I'll probably take a semi-load. That's 19,000 liter totes. One guy. Yeah. And he might need more stuff. He'll need glufosinate and everything else too. Yeah. And about 3 weeks ago, I was talking to a guy in Cornac, and I knew him, he was on our database, but he wasn't getting our daily for some reason. So we started talking, and I said, call him Ralph. I said, did you get your chemical yet? And he said, well, Alan, I just bought it last Friday. And I said, oh, really? Where'd you buy it? And he told me it was a line elevator. I said, what'd you pay? He said, well, a pretty good deal. I got it for $6.40 a liter delivered to the yard here. I said, $5.40 delivered to the yard, $6.30. I said, I could have got it laid in there right around $5 or a little less on your glyphosate alone. Delivered to your yard, free totes, free delivery. Would have saved him over about $25,000 on his glyphosate alone. He's going to call next time.
Yeah.
And
significant.
I might sound like a braggart here. I'm not. I'm just so into the business that I created. But right now, I don't even get to have the reins anymore. My son Chevy runs it. He's the CEO. And then young Joel, I hired him 15 years ago in the backyard in Roqueville here. We're sitting there, my wife and I, having a beer with his parents. He came in all sweated up because he was setting up a bin. And I knew this young feller. So
we might be bad at.
So I said to him, Joel, I said, you need to come and work for us. And he said, well, you can't afford me. And I said, oh, really? What are you charging? He said, $50,000 a year. I said, you start 2 weeks from Monday. And his mouth fell open. He couldn't believe it. Yeah. So he did come to work, and he couldn't do things better than, and even Stephen Harper, and what's his name? Ag Minister at the time.
Oh, Jerry Ritz.
Yeah, Jerry Ritz called us to Ottawa. Go ahead.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay, he called us to Ottawa because they were going to vote to eliminate the monopoly on the wheat board. So I took Joel with me. I thought, well, I'm going to let this young feller meet some of the ducks in the water on the good side. You know?
Yeah.
So I took him with me, and I don't think he's forgot to this day. There was about 50 of us on a plane. We landed over 400 or 500 miles to pick up more. Got there, went out for supper, had drinks, and we went up to this ballroom and had our picture taken with Stephen Harper and Jerry Ritz. And if you look that picture up, it's on our website, johnsonsgrain.com.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting right in front of Harper, and right to my right is Joel in a light blue shirt. I've got a gray jacket on. Jerry Ritz is behind me here, and about 50 more other farmers. It's all listed in there. It's the only time I'll make a centerfold.
Yeah, well, yeah. And when you first came on my radar, I'm just thinking it's probably a banner on the DTN and the Saskatchewan elevators when I was a lease operator with Somerville's, and then I joined. You had the AJ Bat program, and I joined the Club 1000. I remember did that for a year. I couldn't grow enough grain to sell to you. That was a problem there, but and then you're on my radar, and you were very active lobbying against the Canadian wheat board monopoly. And that was
just the monopoly. I always said the wheat board can stay, but the monopoly's crooked. It's totally, because it wasn't in the East and it wasn't in part of BC. I just thought, why are we so special to get screwed around here? It was it was unbelievable. And I'm so close to the U.S. and I had friends down there that farm, and we went down to a lake down there every summer. So I knew what was cooking there. I knew what wasn't cooking here. It's just, and then you go to these shows and the wheat board would tell people, well, we grow the best wheat in the world. I'd step up and they're telling farmers this, and I said, how come you're not sold out? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, we got the best wheat in the world. Why aren't we sold out all the time? Why are we waiting for quotas? They could never answer strict questions like they were just terrible.
Yeah, we had
that a lot worse.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. We did say a lot worse back then. That's for sure. It was a
well. They put, you know what they were part of, and the Liberal government put friends of mine and people that I supported in that cause. They put them in jail.
Yes.
Take their trucks away. Goodell, Ralph Goodell, I'll never forget him. He just did it with a smile on his face. And the worst thing about that, Ralph Goodell was a really close friend of my uncle in Regina, Lloyd Johnston. He built the Vagabond. He was a big engineer in Regina.
Yeah.
I always teased him that he voted Liberal, and he said he didn't. But I said, well, how come every time there's an election, you're in Ralph Goodell's party room with your wife? Back, you mentioned one thing. Don't forget what you were going to say there. But you mentioned DTN. I went to a trade show in Minot, North Dakota in I think it was 91. And I was walking around here, this booth. I saw this booth with this screen with future screen. Going back to Don Monroe, and I zero in on this. And here it was out of Omaha, Nebraska, Data Transmission Network, DTN. And they sold you a dish and a conversion box and a monitor, and unbelievable, but no Canadian content. And I said, could I sell this for you in Canada? Bob Whitman was the guy's name. And he says, well, I can't make that decision, Allan. You'll have to phone my head office on Monday. So I waited till after dinner so Bob could, let these guys know that I'd be phoning. I phoned down and I stated my case, what I did and everything. So they took a whole day and they called me back the next day and they said, Allan, we had a board meeting here and we don't think there's enough grain in Canada to justify having a DTN salesman up there. And I just grinned from here to here. I said, really? I said, well, could I take a risk on it? Could I buy 25 units and ship them into Minot and I'll even go and get them? 25 units? Like that's a whole season for a lot of their dealers. I said, yeah, I should send them down because I'd already pre-talked to some people about it. It wasn't very expensive, eh? And two and a half months, I think it took, I sold them all.
That's that right, eh?
I'd also worked with them on developing the banner line. I said, we need Canadian content. So we had the futures up here, and there was a blank banner line on the bottom. And I said, what can we do with that in Canada? And he said, well, we are not using that in Canada, so it's for sale. This tickled me till this day. He says, for sale, but well, $100 a year, would that work? I said, I'll give it a try. $100 a year. 3 lines, and I could change it every day. And it went out to all these people that had it, the elevators and that.
Yeah. Every week, cool elevator had one. Yeah.
Yes. And, I have a friend down in Lampman had a fertilizer business. And him and I just became really good friends. And we were talking about fertilizer, and he says, Allan, I'm just having a real time here with weed pool. I said, what? He said, well, I'm selling urea at this price, and they'll come out and be $10 less. Every time I adjust it, he said, because I can put it down, and they just match me and beat me by a little bit. I said, really? So I said, what's your price today? And he told me, and I said, what's the fast wheat pool at? And he told me. I said, I'm going to run that on DTN tomorrow. I'm going to put the SAS wheat pool number at Lampman on the call. If you want urea at this price, call this guy at this pool in Lampman. There's his number. One day later, they dropped it all. I'll never forget that. It was just, it wasn't, it was just, again, knowledge, information and knowledge is so powerful. So like your job, Trent Klarenbach report, and what we do, like it's just information that farmers, that, I could go on here forever, I'm sorry, but farmers need this information, and I don't care how big they are. If they farm 40,000 acres or they farm a quarter section, they still need to be understanding what the market is, and how the hell's a guy going to find that out? Exactly. You don't have time to do that. You don't have time to do that. And the same with shopping for chemical. You don't have time to do that. And the bigger you are, people run to you. Geez, don't let me if I get a story about the chemical. I forget where I was going with that.
Yeah. Well, it's to be able to run a business effectively and to scale it, you can't do everything yourself. You need to find out the things you don't like, you're not effective at, and you find people to fill those roles that are better than you. They have, or 80% of you, if not better, right?
I've always said that, Trent. I try and hire people that are smarter than me, because that just makes you go ahead. And that was never too hard. So it just they're out there, but you have to find them, and then you got to make a reason for them to want to stay.
Yeah. I built an environmental company. I purchased it, and then I grew it like 12 and a half times. And I don't know anything about soil, Allan. I don't know anything about wildlife. I even know less about vegetation. But I hired people that were more knowledgeable than me. Yeah.
It's quite a industry, the grain business. And as big as it is, it's just about like you and I talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody kind of knows each other. Or they don't want to know that guy. They know who they don't. Like I know who I don't want to talk to or buy grain for. But that's taken almost 40 years to figure that all out. But I'm a little slow. Not really. Just over the years, you just get people you won't deal with, and then you have some people that you'd like to buy all your grain for.
Yeah,
they're wonderful.
The agriculture space is really neat. I did a little video on this the other day. I was out in Alberta last week speaking to at a retailer and a group of farmers, and I haven't spent any time in Alberta, but I go out there and I meet two people from Saskatchewan who one's a relative, which I didn't know, and the other lady, one of her closest friends has been on my podcast, and her childhood neighbors are going to be coming on here shortly. It's just a small little world we live in, and the agriculture space is really cool that way. So you get to meet a lot of people.
Friend of mine left here. He was hauling gas for the local co-op in town, and he left here and he went to Calgary. He was in university with us, but he didn't say, and he came home and did that, and then he went to Calgary and got a job. But he was pretty sharp, especially with Matt. Yeah. He got a job as a rod man for a surveyor.
Oh, yes.
Well, he ended up, I think, with 3 or 4 or 5 different companies that he was involved with, and they kept getting bought out, and he was a member or an owner. So the guy has done extremely, extremely well. And he told me one day, he says, you know what they call people from Saskatchewan out here in Calgary, Allan? I said, know what? He said, the boss.
Oh, yeah. I believe it.
He took my son Chevy and another young man here from Welwyn out there, and he drove them around. They just come out of university. Drove them around looking for a job. No, this is during winter. This in the summertime. So he saw 5 or 6 different companies, like big construction crews in Calgary. And they got done and went to have something to eat or whatever. And then this guy's name was Don. Don says, my son and this other young guy, well, who do you want to work for? And these 2 guys said, well, who would hire us? He said, you just name the one you want and they're hiring you. You're from Saskatchewan, rural Saskatchewan, automatically hired because they don't have any trouble with people like you. And that was true. They picked the company and went back, and Don just drove up and said, you're taking these 2 guys on. Like Don knows these guys so well. So he got them jobs half a day, really good jobs.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, I've heard that narrative lots, and I believe it. I've heard it. It's just yeah, it's just the way it is, right? There's a good work ethic coming from the real Saskatchewan.
yeah.
And as part of that's a responsibility at a young age, running a tractor and making sure it's ready to operate and service it, and
Yeah.
all those little things that we had the opportunity to experience. That's just part of your fabric growing up, and then other people who don't have it have to learn it in their 20s or late teens even, right?
Well, Judy and I were always big travelers, even before we got married, and we just did lots of traveling. We always took the boys with us. We only have 2 boys. We took them with us and exposed them to whatever we could afford to expose them to, the world. And my son Chevy got his commerce degree in Saskatoon, and then he went back to Calgary and he got a job with ATCO in the oil industry.
Yeah.
He was at that for a couple of years, and then he wanted to get his master's in business. So him and his buddy drove all over the U.S., seeing all the, Hartford and all those heavy-duty universities down there.
Yeah.
But he wanted to go even further than that, so he made application to Oxford, England. Got accepted. So he got his master's degree in Oxford, England. And it just blew my mind. It really did. And when he was there, they send him in different places of the world. That's part of the program. It was expensive, but he got it. And he came home, and I said, Chevy, you got to come work for your old dad. He said, well, I don't want to be in Welwyn. And I said, I don't want you here. I want you in Calgary. Yeah. So I had hired that young Joel guy. I said, you come home, we'll give you a little indoctrination of what we're doing here. And I'll see if Joel will go with you. So he was home, and I asked Joel if he'd go. Well, you could see the dust of Joel going down the road to go to Calgary. And they've taken this company. I maybe had it at 3. They now have it at 12.5.
Yeah. It's amazing.
They've just done so much, and they worked so hard at it. A couple of years ago, we had a blip, though. We went along with chemical, and expensive chemical, thinking we had to be long to be ready. And then down it went. So that kicked us right in the head a couple of times, but we're dug out of that, and we're back operating again. But that chemical business...
Well, business isn't easy. Like your business isn't easy. You if you can make money every year, all the power to you. But it's like you don't. Every deal, every job, every project doesn't always make you money, and it's all part of it. Yeah.
The thing is, you don't hang on. Like I was selling those poly bags, doing really, really well at first, and then I had some complications in it from the owner's wife. She started selling direct to my clients. Okay. So I had to get out. She was cutting I was supplying the trucks and the advertising and doing the trade shows. She's phoning them direct. So I got out of that bag business. But I still like them, still talk to them. But you can't let people do that to you. If you can get out, get out. But sometimes you're just hooked so bad you can't get out.
Yeah. You don't want to be dependent on anybody.
No.
And you got to kind of be careful with those relationships, what the expectations are on the relationships, right? It's complicated.
We're moving propane into Oregon and California.
Yeah.
We're selling regenerative products, just truckloads of regenerative. Chemical, we're probably one of the bigger dealers in Western Canada right now. A lot of people are talking to and dealing with Farmer Business Network out of California. Well, first of all, California they're so woke, they won't buy gas or oil from us. That's the attitude down there. And they own FBN, so why would you support them? We're all Canadian. And then we had a company here in Saskatchewan that was competing with us. Well, guess what? Last fall, they went down, and those farmers that had prepaid a lot of that stuff came to us. Quite a few of them we had delivered the next day. Blew them away. They couldn't believe it. Ordered, we delivered the next day. And now, long story short, they're trying to get back into business again. I'm just asked farmers to do your due diligence and information, know what's going on. Yeah. I always tell farmers, we don't charge farmers anything for marketing, Trent. we charge the grain companies a small tonnage fee on each deal only. We don't charge the farmer. So I tell farmers, when you go to market, treat us like your partner. Phone us up and say, X has given me $5, and tell me that, or tell one of our traders. And if we can get you $5.50, we're happier than you are. And I like it better yet when they say, I'd like to get $5 for my barley, and I get them $5.50. Because that just really blows them away. Because this can't be, Because they're used to phoning the elevator and getting the short end of both sticks, Just I before I got into this business, I was farming and I was marketing, and I got Welwyn and we went to Manitoba, and we bought some Marshall wheat. That was a semi-dwarf wheat, but it's bearded.
Yeah.
So he brought it home, and I sowed 3/4 of it here, and it came up so beautiful. Oh, I just was so happy. That was the year after the drought, so that'd be about 83, 84. No, 84 I think it was. And they come up just beautiful. I'm so proud of this up in here. People, the elevator, UGG, and the pool, of course, found out about it in Welwyn, 2 miles away. He came up, and I left it standing because I didn't want to swathe it and have it sprout. I wanted this big crop of wheat in my bin, Help me get out of that debt I'm carrying. It rained and rained, and it sprouted standing. So there, where you're at now, the elevators wouldn't even look at it. They didn't even want to talk to me. They were snickering under the table. I know they were. So I got on the phone, and I phoned a company in Vancouver that I'm still dealing with today, and I sold it, picked up in the yard. They get the trucks in here and hauled it away as feed. Every bushel. So that was trick number one of learning, for me, to find out you don't have to subsist with, and you could grow mustard, you could grow canola, you could grow flax. You didn't have to go through this weed board system. And everybody was getting wise to that. So I just kept telling people, you don't have to do that, and you don't have to depend on this. Grow feed wheat, But they had their fingers into that, too, at first. But anyway, they're gone.
That whole system, I spoke to some university class here last fall. I was explaining the wheat board quota system to them, and just a very high level, right? But you only sell it. You couldn't manage your cash flow as a business. You had no idea even what you're selling this for. You had an idea, but it was a range, right? Some years there's a final payment. Maybe there wasn't, right? What was that final payment going to be? When were you going to get paid, right? And it was just a...
And when it came in, when they came in, the farmers looked like, oh, look what they did for us.
Yeah.
They screwed you for 6 months, see?
Yeah, and that narrative that they got the highest grain, well, it didn't matter if I couldn't cash flow my operation. Cash is the number one key in business. You can make little to no money and survive if you have cash flow. If you don't have cash flow, you're cooked. Doesn't matter how much. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. If you can't wait long enough to get paid, it doesn't matter. That's what it was for a lot of farmers with the wheat board.
See, I picture at least 200 times just to keep my blood pressure up. I would phone and try and do a deal with the wheat board. Like I'd want somebody. Kansas, we're selling stuff to Kansas and St. Louis and every day now, and piles of it, corn and wheat and flax. And I'd phone in, and they'd find out where it was going to go, what I was getting for it, and they'd make the buyback so high that I couldn't freight it there every frickin' time.
Every time.
Yeah, and then I'd phone the people back doing the deal 3 months later, and it didn't come from the board, not a thing. Like they were just a power trip beyond belief, and they were so arrogant. Oh, they were arrogant. I don't care if they're listening. They were.
There's a few of them left, but so they wouldn't the wheat board wouldn't necessarily steal the client, but they wouldn't let you sell to them.
That's right.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let that guy get ahead of marketing through me, not them. Like they had to make my buyback. Like they had control. They were a monopoly.
Yeah.
I just shake my head and bang and laugh, and then some farmer would phone up and tell me how good they were. I was so happy that day when they passed that in Parliament. Oh,
Well, Prime Minister Harper came out to Robin Waldy's farm, Art Waldy's son, out of Kittersley.
I was there after the vote.
Yeah, I was
After
there
the
too.
vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
I had the opportunity to attend it, and I did. And yeah, that was a big deal. Yeah.
I bought a shovel. They were
did you?
selling, with green shovels with a hand on it about something about the Monopoly gun. I've got it in my shop to this day. Never used it once.
That's awesome.
It should be hanging in here, really.
Well, yeah, you got a few
I'm
things
sorry.
on the wall there. So there's a few things in the conversation I want to make note of. One is Chevy decided to go to Oxford, and I think a large part of that is because of all the traveling that you guys took your two boys on when they're young. They exposed them to different parts of the world. They weren't just thinking of Welwyn, Saskatchewan or Canada or North America. It made Oxford possible.
Yeah. We never took them abroad, but we were all over Mexico and the U.S. and Canada with our boys.
But I think that travel can really expand. It's all right you don't even know it's possible to go somewhere, right? And maybe through ATCO that probably helped him with that. The world probably got smaller too, but I think that travel. Another thing that stood out to me in this conversation was when you were about to give up in your business and you didn't. You found a solution and you stayed in business, and a business that's still in business is successful.
Trent, I want to say I didn't quit because I could still see the light.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was blurry, but it was still there.
Well, a lot of times when it gets really tough, you just, it's hard to take that extra step, and it sounds like you did that. So.
Yeah.
So I got a question here, and we're almost at an hour. So we're probably going to have to do this in a series, actually. But, so can you name an event in your life, an experience that really had a really formidable impact? What is the biggest impact, the event that had the biggest impact on your life?
The wheat board vote.
Wheat board vote?
Yeah, because that not only freed it up for me. Can you see the people in all the elevators and all these guys? You see what's happening now? It's just, It's a whole new freaking world.
It's a whole new world.
It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
What about on a personal level?
Oh, getting married to my wife would have to come pretty high too, because she's taught for 31 and a half years. Really helped me through farming and then helped me through this business financially and just mentally. We fight every day, but I still love her.
Well, she's probably right and you're probably wrong, so it's probably well, that's the thing, right? A lot of times us males might be the figurehead of the family business or something, but really without the support and our wives in our life, the single best decision I ever made, I guess, or is to ask my wife to marry me. And
it's so funny, people will phone up and I'll answer the phone. It happened on Friday. Hello, Allan here, can I help you? Oh, I got the boss. And I said, no, she's not here right now, can I help you?
Yeah.
They laugh, they love that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't they allow us to focus on what we do and the little things in life.
Yeah.
They basically look after and manage quite often, right? So support us. So yeah.
There's
Alan,
thing.
Sorry?
I was just going to say another thing we're getting involved in, and for about a year now, we're bringing in superphosphate from Spain.
Okay.
Superphos. You go on the daily, you can read that, or you can check with any of our experts, I call them, about the details of it. It's $11.50 a ton, semi-load, delivered to your farm.
Well.
Yes, and it's superphos. 46. Well, just read it. Go into the daily, and anybody out there that's listening is not on the daily. It's free. It helps you guys, the farmer. It helps us immensely, and all our grain companies love it. One last message here. I was talking to to a buyer in U.S. I think once, and we were talking about some grain, and he said, "Yeah, I was talking to so and so in China," and I told him something about the price of peas, or I can't remember all the details, and he said, "Well, I don't think that's right," and he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, according to Johnston's Daily, this is the guy in China." It just fries my mind. It just fries me that it's become potent. It really, really has.
And I get it. I receive it daily. I look at it daily, read it daily. It's a great resource. Like, it's information. It's information, and we need our information.
Well, I've had a few farmers, well, not quite a few farmers, say, "Well, I'm getting a report from XX company every day," and I said, "Yeah, that's their report. This is coming from hundreds of companies we deal with in hundreds of different trades." I said, "Nothing like just getting one from one line elevator, or even 2 line elevators. They're still all." I said, I said, "Try it. If you don't like it, let us know and we'll cancel it." I don't think I've ever done that. I've never taken one on. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Allan, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time with me today.
And you time with me.
Well, it's excellent. I always enjoy it. I always enjoy the conversation. So, I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. And thanks for coming on.
There's things coming up in our business that we can't even announce yet, but it's like we're always into something new. But I stumbled onto 2 things here last week.
Okay.
That's probably there. I won't even mention any more about it, but it's just bloody interesting. It'll fit right in like a new pair of socks, you know.
Stay tuned, eh? We'll have to stay tuned.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Trent,
you very much.
See you. Bye
Take
for now.
care.